Shall we get underway? I think the Mayor's doing something. All right, so we've got a run sheet. Okay, so we're going to position P&L scenarios. We're going to talk about water. We're going to talk about road in the budget versus the GMs, capital program, okay. So this slide is just for me to talk about the difference. I always run a philosophy that whether we're a council, and I also ran the same philosophy at the DHB, is that if we do not run a surplus, then we're going backwards. Okay, so the purpose of running a surplus is to ensure that your depreciation is covered in your P&L and your bottom line is a surplus. And depreciation is an expense, and that and creates cash. If you are running a surplus, it creates cash that are used to renew your assets. However, depreciation never keeps up with the cost of renewing those assets, because when you go to renew them, inflation will actually hit you hard. And that is probably part of the reason why you need a surplus, to actually ensure your renewals are being kept up to speed. A surplus also ensures that your debt is getting reduced, because if you don't run a surplus, you can't reduce your debt. And if you don't reduce your debt, then when it comes time for either growth or replacement of your assets, you don't have any headroom in your debt. So I firmly believe, as a council, we must run a surplus. And that is a surplus after vested assets, because vested assets do not come with cash. Vested assets, while they're treated as revenue, they're actually non-cash. And secondly, when you have a number of grants, when that cash comes in, typically it goes straight to capital and there's no offsetting debt expense. So therefore, when you're running a surplus with grants, you've got to make sure your baseline is also a surplus. So effectively, this financial year, right now, our forecast is saying we've got about an $18 million surplus, but you take off the, it's 18? Yep. When you take off the, okay. Same issue with break even. If you do a break even, when you renew your assets, and secondly, you can't. You've got no even growing. That the organisation is actually in a downward spiral, and as it keeps going down, at some point something will break, and that will mean that, and the ratepayers are the ones that will end up paying significantly for that, because you'll have to really lift up the rates. And I think when you look over the history of a lot of councils, well, gloating's not the right word. They actually think they're doing the right thing by reducing rates. And we've done that in this place where we've had 1% or 2%. And to be quite frank, we were going backwards. And therefore, we do need to make sure that the rates are set at the right level to ensure that we're running a surplus of some description. But I also think it needs to be tempered with making sure that balance of what the community expects and what they're receiving, and I think you can also get out of whack by actually becoming inefficient. So the efficiency is really, really critical as well. So that's my little spiel on that. And
just a couple of clarifying questions, please. Going back to you were talking about, say, the 18 mil surplus, including grants, 1 mil excluding grants. Can you just
take the theatre project? We're receiving the ground, and it's coming in as, and so it goes straight to the bottom line. But those grants are being used to build a new facility. And that facility isn't being fully depreciated, so therefore it's propping up the capital spend. It's going straight to capital, not to yeah.
And just another question regarding the importance of going to surplus versus being in deficit. Could you talk me through why a path to surplus is not something that... Yeah, but I'm already feeling like we're going to gun for a surplus this year versus a path to...
I think as an entity we should always be in surplus. Now, a path to surplus, you might backwards. Your debt will just keep growing. Okay, and when you or you don't renew your assets. So if you look at this year, we've got a mix of renewals, and we've got a mix, and our renewals this year, in the 26-27 year, we're got in the list 111 million, okay? Now that's being funded by 43 million of depreciation if we get to break even. The other 57 million, just exclude the grants for the moment, is debt. And look, it doesn't worry me it doesn't worry me if you've got such a big chunk of capital in any one particular time, but at some point in time, the capital spend's got to come down so that you can then use the depreciation that is generated to repay debt or the renewals. And you've got to try and keep that in balance. And again, that's why I believe you've got to run a surplus, because you've got to, one, pay the debt down so you've got stuff ready so that when you get another big renewal like Claremont, you've got to have something in the kitty ready to do. And again, when you do a big project like Claremont, you will borrow, but you've got to pay it down.
Nigel, does the correct amount, because we haven't funded depreciation at that level, so I just want to
Correct. So what you're seeing today is 100% funded.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure that.
Apart from the buildings that are... So that depreciation is too low. Again, if you don't have that depreciation coming,
So when are we revaluing the buildings?
well, we're a bit nervous too, because it's going to be a significant increase in rates.
Yeah, but this is my problem. We're sort of telling half-truths, and I don't mean that against anyone. It's just where we are.
Yeah.
But that's the reality where we are. How do the councils that are ignoring depreciation get on? Because they get audited and get away with it. And we've had a variety of speakers over the last 12 months say some ignore it, some are 50, very few are 100%. So that's kind of a utopia, really, isn't it, in local government?
So they'll be borrowing. They'll be borrowing up. And that's part of the reason why local government as a whole is in trouble. And also their assets will be deteriorating. So, you know, we talked about the potential of some councils ripping up sealed roads. That just shows you that they're actually underfunding their depreciation.
A lot of councils have been doing it just in time for ages, and using the rates as a up and down to, if it's a big project, everyone in their psychology is, yes, we can afford a reasonable rates if we want it this year, but it's all just in time.
It was interesting, and Steph alluded to this last week, but Graham and I caught up with Neil Holdham, who was the ex-New Plymouth mayor, and New Plymouth are looking at a low rates number this year, but he said to do that, they're borrowing an extra, I think it was 17 million to fund renewals for 1 year. And then it becomes another year. So I think the key thing for me, wherever we get to with these discussions, is that we actually look in rather than look out at what everyone else is doing, because the answer is it will be in this room, not out there, chasing trends.
Nigel, we've talked about this before, but how much work are we doing on really looking at our assets and selling what we don't need and selling what is not giving us a return? And I'm not talking the Alpines of the world, that's a whole nother thing, but like the land that we had identified.
Not enough yet.
Yeah, and forestry blocks and things like that.
Not enough yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so we really need to get onto that.
And as cost saving, Nigel, following on from Michelle's question, all these leases that are peppercorn rentals, they've got to be dealt to, around the place. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
It's nobody's fault in here.
No, I know, but it's our problem that we've been talking about it for 3 years and we haven't done anything. So my challenge to you is get someone onto it so we stop giving away ratepayers' money. G'day, Di.
On that, I have mentioned this, but I expect the farmers' car park is actually one of those.
Yep.
Yep.
So if we think about next year and we think about, well, what does it look like? So we've modelled at a very high level what a 12% increase might look like. This is an average increase. A 9%, a 7% and a 5%. So with the 12%, which was what we had in the LTP, was bringing in a surplus of 4.5. Now, in our LTP, we had actually budgeted a deficit, but over the term of the 10 years, our 15, 12, 12 actually got us to a break-even point over time. What it shows is that over the last couple of years, having a 9% increase last year and actually looking at cost savings and revenue increases, we've actually been able to turn that deficit into a surplus in this year. if we continued with the 12%. 9% was modelled purely because that's what we had last year. And so we thought, well, okay, if we do a 15.99, then we are actually still going to turn this year into a surplus. 7% is where we make a slight profit, but it would keep things ticking along, basically. And a deficit, 5%, 1.7 million.
Can I just clarify, this is based on the same expenses across all of the models? Yeah. And then is that based on, what are those expenses? Because, last workshop you kind of had pulled or made some corrections.
Yes.
So is it based on those corrections only and no further savings ideas?
Correct.
Right, okay, cool.
Yeah. So it's basically, it was modelled on draft 2. And so we've just stuck with that at this point. So Nigel's alluded to a majority of these comments here is, what's the impact of a 12, a 9, a 7 and a 5? I think we don't need to go into that. If we now look at attachment 2,
Is that the one with the 2 at the top right-hand corner? It's attachment 3.
I have a 2. It's the one that's called Different Scenarios, Whole of Council.
It's in the hub, it's attachment 2. It's got 3 blue stripes.
That one is different.
No, attachment 2. It's the scenario.
It's
Overview. Okay,
the overview one.
sorry. It's got all the blue lines. That's the first page. Oh, okay. Okay. So essentially, this is the makeup of the 12, 9, 7 and 5, just at a high level, rates, subsidies, grants, expenditure. So that's all.
I got confused when I had a quick look at this last night because you've got the first blue column, that is our long-term plan figure or not?
There is no long-term plan on these numbers.
Right.
There's no
okay,
comparison.
So that's where I got.
So the first...
So the first one is the 7%?
Correct,
Right,
yes.
okay, thanks. So we don't know what we had. Looking at the sheet, you haven't got what was in the
No.
long-term plan? Okay.
No, which is...
It's okay, I just confused myself.
Yeah.
Use those ones because they'll have the same.
Cool, thank you. So any comments on those? I guess the next couple of slides, so the next couple of attachments, if we can go to number 2, no, number 4.
Michelle's point is a good one, but I think we'll end up talking to some of that later,
Yes.
as in what expenses have been pulled up. Yeah, okay, good.
Okay, so if we look at attachment number 4, so it was asked last week to... Oh, yes. So it was asked last week, I think, to actually, what does the future years look like? And so what we've tried to model here is what does council look like 27, 28 without water, but with the new projects included. So we've tried to model it so that it gives some kind of indication as to, well, okay, this scenario here is sticking at the, if we went with a break-even this year of 7.08, that council in 27, 28, if we add in our new projects, so that information has come from the long-term plan budgets for those activities, given the time frame, I used those numbers purely because they were in the long-term plan, which over the 10 years we were coming out at a surplus. So hence I've used those numbers in these scenarios here.
So that's a 5%, 4%, 4%. Is that correct?
No.
Yeah, in future years.
Yeah. So what the new council looks like in 27, 28, and so I've just done a couple of scenarios. So if we said, well, okay, in 27, 28, we only wanted a 5% increase, we would be making a deficit of $3 million. And for us to break even, we would have to have a 10% increase in year one of our long-term plan.
So Andrea, so the assumptions section where it's got 544, that was what was in the LTP?
No. That was essentially 5 being heading towards rate capping of and I've used 4 as a maximum
but for
number.
us to break even, we'd need 10. Okay, I've got you. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, can you give us some examples? You said, but with the new project. So what are...
But this is the operating for the theatre and the museum
okay.
and the stadium.
Got.
Yeah.
There's Claremont in there too.
No, because water's not here in 27, 28.
Just with the stormwater not included, does it need to be ring fenced and treated separately? I understand that, but is that a profit or another loss-making thing? Because that's going to impact.
It will be ring fenced or it will be reported on separately.
Absolutely, I get that.
Yeah.
But is that another loss-making exercise? Therefore, actually rates aren't those numbers, they are more. Because it's great ring fencing something, but if we're still paying for it and it's another loss of $1 million, that's another 1% on rates.
Sorry, I'll just jump in there. When we were doing the water service delivery plans, stormwater was actually running a slight surplus over those 10 years.
Just in that modelling with the depreciation, where you've got 1% next to it, does that mean you've just inflated it 1% every year? Whereas that will be quite different, won't it, from 26, 27 to 28 when Claremont comes on? I know that's out of there because there's no water, but when the theatre and the stadium come on, or Dukes, I would have thought next year, in the 26, 27 year, we will only have a part year depreciation, and then the year after there'll be quite a substantial jump up.
I think what that's trying to show is that these percentages are being added and you've got a stored deficit and it could grow. Okay, so it's just, you could lift them and it would just get worse. So those big projects, those two actually are quite significant for us in 27, 28. But in saying that, the other thing that needs to happen in here is, the other tricky part for 27, 28 is we've taken water out and the overheads that we put to water have been taken out, but they could be stranded, so it could get worse.
So we've made the assumption in this particular model that the services that we currently provide to water will continue.
And if water decides to go and do it some other way, we're going to have to downsize. Because effectively, what this shows you is in 27, 28, a third of the organisation is going. Third's going.
You don't have any revenue for that?
No, it's coming from the water.
So
but
it's
where's
coming
that?
in as a credit against the overhead allocation, so it comes in under other expenses.
Oh, okay, so you're not showing a revenue line?
No.
No, okay.
And those stranded overheads could be massive if you're losing a third of your organisation.
Yep. So effectively, for the LTP is a massive job because of water going. The whole place has to be reset.
Yeah.
And it touches everything. It touches customer services, it touches finance, it touches IT, it touches HR, it touches the lot. And I think that people are not quite ready for that. And when we're talking about the project to end up the WSO, we've actually got to have a sister project of council.
But the other thing we're ignoring here is any RMA reform. Not RMA, local government reform, aren't we?
But that comes the next time. That's got to be done later, because
Yeah,
it won't be done then.
yeah.
No, by then. I think that's one thing that the Minister did say in that, what I was hearing, that people wanted it sooner and done. So we will be giving considerations to new, I would have thought, in the LTPs, to new formats, new structures, potentially.
With the water, is it here or no, or that's not a third?
So the water debt is closer to a half.
Well, that's nice.
So they take a third of the revenue and about half the debt.
Can I just ask Andrew Lester a question? In your water group, you know, with these setups of the variety of entities, is anyone
It's not
being clever and
part
trying
of
to
it.
sell services to those groups, as in HR, computer systems? Because that would be a smart thing to do.
There is, in Water NZ's setting up a CE forum about shared services of this. I talked earlier, the Waikato groupings and the various around there, the software packages are actually syndicating, so any other organisation can actually jump in on the licences I've got with and getting a discounted rate. So that's how they've been looking at that. There's not a service provider, they're all fighting, as you expect, trying to get their share of the pie, whereas the CE forum is the one that's actually trying to get those benefits of scale.
There's a few enterprising councils out there as well. I mean, say Palmerston North runs call centre functions for a variety of councils and things like that. There are opportunities out there, but they do need a bit of forward, sort of upfront capital to get going.
I guess to the CE's point, it's going to be a reality, isn't it? We're going to have stranded overheads in some ways at some period that will need some sort of reorganisation.
This is all happening at the same time as we've got government reform coming on. The whole thing, I mean, let's be clear about this, is an absolute cluster. And while the government is saying they will get to us with detail, like they did this morning around rate capping and everything, they're on hold because it's an election year. That's why we're stymied. The election year is not allowing them to give the future detail of what the potential of local governance looks like, so they don't want to do it. How can we sit here today with all this incredible work that's been done and everything and the scenarios, and really thoughtfully and knowingly understand what the future looks like? We need to know. We need to own this narrative for the public, because I've had so many people ask me when I say that. It actually has been a few, and I'm quite surprised. But rate capping is the topic, and we don't really know and understand. Context of what local government reform will look like. What's the structure? And here we are trying to do long-term plans.
Well, I mean, this conversation is just purely focused on next year, but hopefully it's giving you guys the tools and levers to set yourselves up to go into rates capping in a reasonably strong position. There's lots of unknowns at the moment, but it's sort of making decisions on what we do know to try and strengthen our position for all the stuff we don't.
So Stephen's right, but we'll go back to the annual plan. The reason we're bringing forward what we're looking at in the future is it has an impact on what we do for this annual plan. So it's a way it's either you coast into rates capping or you actually get a lumpy ride. So carry on.
So attachment 2 and 3 are models that are similar to 7, but it shows that if we had a higher increase next year, what the impact would be on those other years. So, for example, on attachment 3, I don't know what the title is.
Future with baseline.
Sorry, Future with Baseline 8.5.
Got 3 up the top, right?
You can see there that by increasing it about $1.25 million rates this year, means that in the second year, break-even is only 7.82%. And then the following year, if you went with 5, your break-even would be 4.66. So, and similarly, attachment 2 or future base at 9%, once again, is $1.5 million more this year, but you can see there it's 7% next year. So what you decide this...
Break even 1.7.
No, 7.82%.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So you can see there that what we tried to illustrate was that depending on what percentage increase you went with this year has a future impact on the things that we know at this point in time.
Sorry, Mr. Trainer, just going back to your very first slide around surplus, break-even deficit. Obviously, we're talking about break-even here at 7.82% and 4.66%. So how does that factor into your big speech of surplus is key? I just wonder, why isn't there a line showing that? Like, how are we going to work our way to that, or are we just not? Was that first slide our ideal world? But I'm just confused now why we're showing a break even, which we've been told is not going to help us set ourselves up well for the future.
I guess break even is where your minimum.
Yes, I know.
So the percentage that is shown in here is that you have to go, what we're showing is that you have to go over and above that to get a surplus. So essentially this is the minimum it would take to break even. So it's thinking about, well, okay, we're going to get to a surplus, but at what level? And at some point rates capping will come in. And so if we don't stick with a higher one in the next couple of years, then you'll be in trouble once rates.
That you can get to a break even with a surplus in 26, 27 under your LTP. So you can go under it right down to about 7%. That's your minimum, okay? However, then in 27, 28, you've got a real problem on your hands. Either we're going to have to really relook at what services we provide. How do we resize the place for water going, and also try and keep rates at a reasonable level. Now that work is the critical work.
It's the first, sorry. I was going to say that's the first year of our long-term plan, so that's when we can have that full conversation with our community on what this is really going to look like.
Correct.
Yeah.
And these figures, just to reiterate, they are taken straight out of the LTP, so these show no potential, no expenses.
No.
We've moved quite a long way from the LTP, because if we'd just stuck with the LTP, you'd be at 12, you would have been at 15, 12, 12. We deviated. We went 15, 9. Now 9% means that we had to do the restructure and we had to pull back hard on expenses, and that has put us in a good position for year 3, which means we can go below 12. If we've got ourselves into a position now, if you go with the LTB at 12, you've got a surplus. We're now saying your minimum is 7, and that's because of the work we've done over the last 2 years.
They don't.
Going back to your original comments, it's not a healthy surplus, is it?
No.
So there again, this is about, not rushing to the bottom, and this is why we've got to be very careful with this number. And, to be fair, I actually think the number's got to be high versus low, and then all that hard work has got to be done through the LTP, otherwise we set ourselves up for imminent failure if we're not smart. That's easy enough to work out what 11 would be. What's about 3.6, isn't it? Surplus, as an example, is about 900 KA. So you can work back. But the difference between 11, 12, 11, 10, 9 ratepayers, in all reality, on those numbers, are only going to look at a high number. We actually have to not look at the numbers and look at how we set the council up for success in the future. So I just caution the council that if we jump to a 7%, which still won't be popular, in all reality, we could fail the community long term. This is probably one of the more decisive annual plan budgets that sets us up into, coming into that key LTP period where everything is going on, but we have to get it right. So interesting challenge, but let's keep working through this, yeah.
Do we have a good understanding of what a 1% average rise in interest rates means in rate rises? Because it's always been my worry is, we've made some surpluses or, made some progress one of the main factors is low interest rates. As soon as those interest rates go up, we're toast.
So essentially, 1% on our 250 million is quite a lot of money, yes.
It'll be nice, actually, I might try and work it out myself now. What that is, I'll work it out myself now.
So essentially a 1% increase in rates is about $1 million. Yeah.
And saying that, as far as the debt though, we're not far away. You work through the solution through LTP. You recall TDHL 20 million pay off debt. Half the debt is associated with council. You divest some of the things that Michelle's been harping on about. We get a good program around that. There might be another, 10 harping. Sorry, that's probably not good, but she has. You've got to harp to embed some thinking sometimes. But that could be 30 million off debt, just there, isn't it? And then actually, with a sustainable surplus, council debt, not water debt. That's different. But council debt could be quite sustainable and onto a good program of repayment.
So the biggest reduction in our interest is not interest rates, because interest rates haven't fallen significantly. It's the timing. We haven't been drawing down the debt because we've been behind on our capital program, which, while everyone wants to get on and do it faster, well, actually, I'm fairly comfortable that we're getting it done, but it's actually saving us a bit of money on the process.
So the maths was actually quite simple in the end, but so 1% increase in interest rate would equate to a 2.5% rate rise?
Yes.
Ballpark, yeah.
So just on that, have we been looking at the capital project going forward, to your point, Nigel, and trying to slow it down? Because that's a reality, isn't it?
I mean, the aim once these big projects are over with you across all of council is that your capital program is within your depreciation. And I know that a revaluation of our vertical assets is a key concern. However, we've got a lot of new ones and depreciation should be built into that at 100%. So once these new ones are done, outside of that, you've got this building, you've got some others, but it may not be as bad as, as we think.
And when water leaves the council, the remainder of depreciation will be around the 20 2 to 23,000 million mark. So the capital program from council, what's left, the lion's share of it will be roading. It'll be about 18 million, and then there's only about 5 million for other stuff, and that probably will get pulled back a bit as well. So effectively, we're going to be an entity that's predominantly roading, and the depreciation that goes across to the water is about 19, 20 million. So that's where we're going to be. The majority of our work will be roading.
So can I just point you in the direction of the break-even calculation attachment or attachment 1? Break-even.
Your attachment numbers are different to the hub attachment numbers, I think, so just give us the header.
Hub, it's attachment 1.
Attachment 1, okay.
So it's got a 1 under it. Looks like that.
Which one?
One on the top corner.
Blue, pink and green.
So just very quickly, this page here is our break-even at 7%, but it has the water and then essentially the remainder of the council. So you can see there that water is actually consuming quite a lot of the increase. I'll leave it at that. Which, going forward 27, 28, you'll be paying that through a fee and charge, whatever that looks like through the entity. So your council rates will go down, but the water charges will be on top of, as opposed to included.
That's always been the case though, hasn't it? Like right through the modelling that we've done, it's always been known that your water charges will be going up. Yeah.
I think for us, I still don't think that's probably clear for community, understanding that no matter what was happening with water, that it was going up like that, on that scale. Yeah.
So it's quite clear that for the council, that's where the deficit sits. There is another couple of areas that I know are deficits that we're working on. And
Sorry, can we, just when we're all using, just this is for everyone, when we're using microphones, can we pull it right in front? Because there's a few that are hard of hearing.
So when we did the water service delivery plan, the water service delivery plan has a deficit. But this scenario is actually fixing that. So when the water service organisation opens up, it's at a break even. So it's going across with the ability to actually do well. And then the remainder is just a small surplus. So my thinking is I'm not too worried what percentage you guys resolve because the higher the better, but we've got to keep it into context. The real work starts, so effectively if we can get this annual plan out of the road, done, get people doing BAU, the real work then starts on the LTP, and it has to start straight away because there is so much to be analysed and looked at and changed. It's a big, big job, this one. This is the biggest one we've probably ever had.
Nigel, look, I might be behind things here. What is the result after 2029 of not meeting 4%? What are they going to do to us?
The statutory,
considering Timaru provides services for Waimati, Mackenzie, North Otago, to a certain extent Ashburton, we're supposed to live at 4%, while neighbours can easily live at 4%. Is that Geraldine as well?
Well, for me, I'm used to an environment where you have the equivalent of a rates cap. So when I worked at Health, we were given a price volume schedule every year, and it was always is normally around the 2.5% to 3%. Every single year, you had to make sure that you could live with that. Majority of those entities were in deficits, but it's our job to actually rise to the challenge and actually live within the 4%. And it does mean that you've got to look under every single rock and actually make sure that those are dealt to. Because there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to live with 4%. There's no reason if we get our act together.
Just to poke the bear, why can't we do that for the annual plan?
Because you've got this massive. Because
I'm just poking the bear because this is the commentary. I don't want to do that, but this is the commentary we'll get in the community, and I want to hear what the answer is.
Because we've got this, you've got the three of your biggest capital programs going on right now, all at the same time. And you think about it, theatre's done, museums done, libraries, not library, the art gallery's done, the Claremont's done. Once you've got all those are done, you actually should be back into equilibrium of just doing replacements. And that then should, and if you keep your depreciation right, you should be able to live within that. But you will get shocks. You will get shocks where roading goes 7% or whatever percentage up because of something that's out of whack. Just like now, you know, we're going to face an increase in our business in what we do because of bitumen's going to go through the roof, all our contractors are going to go through the roof, and that will shock us. But that should be able to be talked through with Crown.
We've already seen in the past where we had a self-imposed rate capping when we look back, and it wasn't about financial prudence, it was about politics. It was about people wanting to stay in this chamber, and it hadn't worked, and we've been playing catch up because of it. So I don't understand how, I know that once all those are out of the way, and we've got a whole new world ahead of us, rate capping will not work. And we need to make sure that we own that narrative. It's not going to work. We've seen it around the world. Infrastructural deficit becomes the buzzword, and yeah, it's all well and good, but they're leaving a back door for if you've got a project or if you've got a real deal, or if you've got something, they'll look at it on a case by case basis. But it's not a great future. I'm sorry.
Could I just say thanks to those that have brought to the attention of people using the microphone. I know it's an ageing thing, but I reluctantly yesterday booked a hearing test for tomorrow because there are times I miss words and then I miss the whole sentence. So I appreciate the people. We've been given these great tools and it's fantastic that you're using them. I appreciate it. But I have a question. When I look at that slide up there, I like that surplus of 1.8. I know some might want the 4.5, but I like the 1.8 because it seems to be reasonable, physically responsible surplus. So if we were going to have and this is just a question, I'm not trying to leave what I'm thinking, if we went for a 7% rate increase, what do we have to do if we did that to still get a 1.8 million surplus? Have you looked at what's that look like, and what is it that we've got to trim or take or out of the expenses?
Look, can I just make a comment on it? I think that's part of we're running. We could do all that, but you're probably running out of time, and then that would require considerable consultation, taking into account we just did ask some of those questions. So some of those harder questions around bigger savings, levels of service changes really need to be long-term plan versus annual plan. you could do that, but you'd just bring forward your LTP, basically, the conversations that you would have. So it's striking that balance. It's a fair question, and you could do all that. I think the officers basically are saying, let's make a decision now, and all those bigger savings, let's really hit the road, now and focus on that for the long-term plan as opposed to annual plan. Yeah, that's just my thinking.
No, I hear that. I think my question comes from a background of ignorance, obviously, because I don't understand a lot of the history behind things. And I just thought that maybe there'd been a discussion where it said if we went for 7 and still tried to achieve a surplus, this is what I thought that might have been just a little side issue, but I'm not here to create a whole lot of extra work for people. That's not the strategy. I'd like to get on with this and get things moving. So
yeah, and there'll be different views. I don't think it's from background of at all, Graham. I think it's a fair question that every councillor should be. I just personally think we're going to have a better crack at all of that because we're going to have a proper look at the entire organisation through the long-term plan, and then we can sort of better in the position to take the community with us on that and what that means as far as reduction of levels of service, because we're nearly, St Paddy's Day. Oh, that's exciting. St Paddy's Day, gotta love St Paddy's Day, so I've got sidetracked. But my point is we're getting through the month, aren't we? So we're running out of time, yeah.
So I guess that leads into the next sort of section, is roading. So,
Can I just add though, how frustrating I find the conversation every year. We sit here at the same time, and once again the train's on its journey and it doesn't stop. And I haven't changed my narrative in 4 years, that we have opportunities to do the work and to do the right thing by a ratepayer, and once again we just going to push it to the side and say, okay, we'll wait for the LTP. I just find it incredibly frustrating as a councillor to sit here and once again we just go, we've run out of time, and I just, honestly, it just frustrates me incredibly that we are doing a disjustice to our ratepayer, that we're lazy.
So can I respond to that? You shouldn't be frustrated because we had an LTP with a 15, 12, 12. Yes, we did 15. We came straight back in at 9 and we're running a $1 million surplus instead of a deficit. And now we're sitting here, we're not even talking about the 12. Well, we are, we've got it there. But actually you're talking about somewhere between 7 and 9. And that's quite a lot of progress. And for that year, you're not going to run a 5.8 deficit that the LTP says. We're going to be running either a break-even or surplus. So actually, we've done a lot of work. So effectively, you shouldn't be frustrated. You should actually be quite proud of what we've done so far. And yes, we've done a lot of work to actually get back to 7 or 9 this year. And effectively, we're positioning ourselves for the first year of the LTP, and in addition, bringing those new services on board. So effectively, I think you shouldn't be frustrated. You should actually be proud of what we've done so far. And as a council, you've done a fantastic job, and the officers have done a fantastic job of moving the ship around.
Can I just add to that? I think we had quite a robust debate last week around what are the options to really take some expense out, and most of them sat in the long-term plan as opposed to the annual plan. And so I think, and I hear what you're saying, but we really need to make sure that we hit the ground running and get that long-term plan sorted and have all those conversations we've talked about, so that we set ourselves up for the future without water and with rates capping.
And sorry, to your point too, and I think this is probably, we didn't celebrate this enough as far as the savings, because like, governance, we naturally look for the next weak point and focus on that. We probably don't celebrate the wins enough. But if the organisation hadn't made those changes, you'd be looking at deficit. And so, under those same scenarios, if not worse. So, yeah.
I guess I'm Councillor Scott's camp, while I think we have done well, there are some low-hanging fruit, and this chamber sometimes feels scared to make the tough decisions around things we can no longer afford or that have become too expensive. So I challenge the CE, when you look under that rock, that starts tomorrow, because I can still see obvious things where we can save money, but we just get a bit nervous.
What are those?
Well, we've debated the Pleasant Point pool for 2 years, and, you know, it's going to be $500,000 by the time we put a liner and a heater, a system, you know, for the usage. There we are. There's $5 million in roading that isn't NZTA subsidised, and most councils only meet or match NZTA subsidies. You know,
The pool, though, if you were driving that and really wanted that as a saving, you would have been doing that since, you know, last year. I think it's unfair a couple of months out from an annual plan to rush a conversation with the community and then rush another option on what that might look like. You know, whether and I agree that should be looked at. What is the overall community pool model? What's the capital expenses required? Is there a community model that would better, you know, do we put the capital in? Do we, you know, give it over? I think those are all, but we've got 2 months, so I don't think that is going to be something that we can get done by middle of the year. Yeah.
but to Stacey's point, some of these things we discussed last year, we haven't moved forward. The community halls that aren't used, that we pay rates on, we maintain them. Others we're making losses on. You know, it all just sits there. Even buildings we've got, like the one beside us, you know. I'd just like to see more action.
It's where Michelle was saying that the LTP is we need to open the hood as such and just go for it. And so I respect that and I understand that, but we will need to be very serious about, you know, forestry blocks, big numbers to reduce debt. And so I'm comfortable if the program is being developed for the LTP, but let's not get into a position where it's too late and that we say we've run out of time. I'm just emphasising that let's do it properly.
I think one final comment for me, I think the key thing too, and I do support looking at the savings, the key thing though is that we don't step away from here and it's not wrapped up in a program. So, you know, I'm sure with pools is, you know, that can have a focus, but we, you know, as far as that divestment of some of those properties, we'd all feel like we've been treading water on that, I think would be polite. So we need that wrapped up under someone that can actually, you know, give us a quarterly report on where that's at.
Yeah. You know, it's like the peppercorn rentals might not seem much, but we're subsidising one ratepayer at the expense of all of them. Yeah.
So just moving on to the next part of today, we're up to roading. So there potentially is some savings here that could be factored into this plan.
Brilliant, thank you. So just trying to really define that funded versus not funded gap and trying to explain that in as simple way as I can possible. So yes, there is funding that goes into the land transport unit and works that we do on the roads that isn't funded by NZTA. So in the capital space, there is a funded gap there, obviously. But noting that there is some work that we do and that our community does expect us to do that will never obtain NZTA subsidy, and I think there's sometimes a bit of confusion around that and around what that means. So you'll see there in the capital program in those activities that are not eligible for NZTA subsidy. So there's about 5.4 million in the capital program, and that includes our parking infrastructure and parking management systems. They are not funded and never will be. Our operational fleet that we have at Timaru District Council, our survey operational equipment used by our council teams, our strategic planning initiative for our town centres, so our community board funds are capital and they're not able to be funded by NZTA, and then other community amenity or place-based improvements. So we'll do some capital works improvements on requests from the community, long-standing requests that won't attract capital subsidy. Then there is the gaps within the NZTA program. So year 3 is actually better than we have had in years 1 and 2 for available funding. But there are still some activities in the capital program that are not fully funded by the Transport Agency. Probably the biggest one in that is the bridges, so bridge renewals and structure component replacements, where we might replace a deck of a timber bridge or something like that that's coming near the end of life, but we can get another 10 years out of it, a bit like what we've had with the terrace overbridge. So that's kind of the capital gaps that we have there. But as we have celebrated in the past a little bit, finally obtaining that pothole prevention funding fully funded by the New Zealand Transport Agency was a big win, and that is historically where we've had to spend a lot of money and will continue to need to spend a lot of money. So that's in those drainage renewal works that we do, so that includes curb and channel and rural drains and culvert replacements. It's our road rehabilitation or road rebuilding, so where we've got increased demand on particularly our rural roads have had a large amount of expenditure over the last 10 years at least that I've been here, where we've had to rebuild roads slightly ahead of time due to the increased demand through changing land use and those kind of things. So those are all fully subsidised now, and NZTA, you'll see that there has been an increase, we'll get to it when we get to the capital program, increase in funding available from NZTA as well in that space. So the main changes that we've already done in the kind of the SLT recommendations, and we'll go to that a little further, is that deferral of the Sophia Street car parking work as a result of the geotechnical reports that are outstanding or coming close to fruition, and deferring the on-street parking meter replacement program. The rest of it still pretty much remains the same, so the level of service base is remaining the same, and we've got a rather large capital program or capital improvement program, which is the State Highway 1 alternative, so which is around that Cartwrights Road, Callans Road, improvements, so where it floods out at the moment, and the 1 in 10 year events actually getting to the point where residents of Timaru can get home if they're trapped to the north when we have a flooding event. So that's pretty much the capital program. Has anyone got any questions on that?
I'm sorry, but I got confused when I opened this paper last night, because you've got at the very top, number 1, you've got annual plan draft 2, and then you've got SLT recommendation. And the total capital program, you've reduced the amount, but the council funded and the subsidised haven't changed. So then I'm going, aren't they supposed to add up?
Let me check.
If we're recommending a reduced total capital program, what's it coming out of? Is it coming out of the not funded or the subsidised program? Those figures haven't actually changed.
No.
I'm pleased I wasn't the only one then.
Oh, no, so the subsidisable program, that is what has been the same from NZTA, so that should be the same figure. The difference is, so we're not reducing any of the council-funded activities, so they haven't reduced, but the total capital program versus the SLT recommendation is reducing those areas where we haven't been successful in obtaining funding from NZTA, so it's slightly less bridge replacement, so we've had to do a little bit more component replacements.
Should those two figures not add up?
Can we start line by line to work out what they are? So total capital program, 31,471, and we would, if the recommendation from officers is 27,913. Council funded activity stays the same. So what is the sustainable program, this 26.6? Is it a completely separate
So yes,
number?
that's regardless of which program, if you went along with the LTP versus the SLT recommendations, that is the money of the approved total program for capital that NZTA will give us.
So is that part of the 27?
Yes, correct.
So we're still putting 1.3 million into the capital program?
Yes. Yes. Sorry, I do try not to confuse, but I know as soon as I start talking subsidies, it does get confusing.
Confused, sorry, because you've still got here the SLT recommendation is to spend 5.4 million on non-subsidised programs.
So she's cut the gap from 5 million to 1.3.
No, she isn't. It's 5 and 5.
Parking meter program, blah, 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 and that reduces the capital program.
So
I don't know if it's total.
that should reduce the 5.4 million of non-subsidised capital, but we don't show that in the top line. That's where the confusion is.
Yeah, the SLT recommender, sorry, that should be, yeah. Apologies.
Yeah, because as it reads, we haven't done anything at all to save money on council-funded activities, which just seems bizarre, but that number's obviously wrong.
Yes, apologies, it was a Sunday effort.
But also we must be just shifting the debt for the farmers strengthening and just taking it out of next year's financial year and it's got to go somewhere else because it has to happen.
Potentially. We're unsure at this stage if the project does need to go ahead at that scale. So we're kind of going, well, we know we won't be able, for deliverability purposes, we won't be able to deliver that next financial year with certainty. And if it became a project that needed to come forward, then obviously there'd be an unbudgeted expenditure report that would come to council for consideration once we actually have all of the information at hand.
I guess I'd say I'm a bit disappointed because apart from taking out the parking meter program and it's been deferred, and I wonder whether we're better to contract that to someone anyway, but we've only saved 50k because the Sophia Street, we're just sitting on our hands hoping that an engineer agrees that our earthquake proneness isn't the same after reviewing the work.
Well, yes, we have saved more from the year 3 of the long-term plan, but we'd already made some changes through the annual plan draft, but we have maximised the available NZTA available funding. So the capital program is pretty close to 50% funded from NZTA. Of that is subsidisable, as you can see in there. So we actually have had, we have had reductions from year 3, yes, but year 3 of the long-term plan, but that isn't showing on this.
Yeah, so when we look at the pie graphs and you've got budget version 2 amended, so we've got more NZTA funding than council share subsidised work, whereas I thought they only funded 49%, so I don't understand how, and we do 51, they do 49, so how are they paying 12.7 and we're only paying 9.8?
So normally that is the case. For that Kellens Hill project, it's actually funded at a significantly higher financial assistance rate. And so the way that the financial assistance rates worked back in 2011, there was NZTA board consultation and change to how they calculated the financial assistance rates. So in the past, the larger metros kind of sat around that 43, 47%, and like TDC, for example, was 56% financial assistance rate. There was changes made, and now it's all fair across the country with a 51% financial assistance rate.
So
we've got a couple of one-off projects that are getting either 75 or 100 or something.
Yes, so we've got some.
So can I just to try and sort this in my head. So the council funded non-subsidised stays the same at 5.4. The NZTA funding stays the same at 12.7. The council subsidised work is dropping from 13.3 to 9.8. How does that happen? What's making up the difference in the $3 million that we're pulling back of our share of subsidised work? That's the piece that I am struggling with.
Then what happens the year after?
What is that?
Yeah, good question. I think probably the best one to have a look at is the table, which is just above 4 activities not eligible for NZTA, so on page 2.
But none of them are subsidised work. That 3.56, that table, that parking meter.
No, sorry, over the page is the best one to have a look at.
Oh, that's confusing for me. I'm not convinced we need, it's more the OPEX that we should be looking at than this.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Because if NZTA is going to put in 12.7, are we comfortable to actually match it? Because we had a quick look at the depreciation that roading gets, and it's it's about 18 million in depreciation. So when you look at the first one, it's within depreciation. The 12.2 is actually funded coming straight in as revenue. It's a fund, and it's going straight out to the capital. But should that be at the bottom line or not? So it's more the OPEX that I think we should be looking at.
Operational expenditure is in there. If you go to that funding gap table, number 4 on page, what's that, page 3? Page 4. Different attachment, sorry. One left it out. So Land Transport Operational Program Funding Overview. So again, there is things in there that we do, particularly in the urban environment or the urban area, that does not attract NZTA funding. So they are sit fully with council, and there's about 1.8 million in there that sits in that space. So you've got the likes of your CBD maintenance and cleaning, your urban street tree maintenance, the parking operations and facility maintenance, and I don't even want to say it, but the decorative or community lighting is also included in there. And also some of the land transport unit operational costs, so the administration work that we do to support other business units and work across council. And so the second part that is funded by NZTA, again, is in that pothole prevention funding, which is fully funded. The sealed, which is your sealed road maintenance, your unsealed road maintenance, your grading, your metalling, and drainage maintenance. Again, there's a bit of a gap in the bridges, bridge maintenance, which council is contributing over and above to, and traffic services and your road marking. That stuff's all funded, but there is a bit of a gap there. And your street cleaning and cycleway maintenance is also funded by NZTA. So the actual gap in there, if you see down on the Land Transport Operational Program funding overview, the shortfall between the NZTA approved program and what is able to be subsidised, so meets the criteria, is actually only 415,000. So it's whether or not you'd like to pull back on any of those funded services to just meet NZTA funding.
I'd like to see, you've got good examples here of council-funded or non-subsidisable activities. I'd like to see what are the activities that are either co-funded specifically or funded through NZTA, better like this, because even though it's subsidisable, is that actually a word?
Don't think so.
Yeah. Even though it's it's there, subsidisable, it's in black and white. It's still the largest component of the expenses. Mm-hmm. So there's no clarity around what those are specifically. It just says that these are either funded or co-funded.
Yeah, so we've got that information is in obviously in the line-by-line budgets, and I'm happy to do another presentation with the overarching, here's what's funded by NZTA. I've had those slides, I think, previously, but it's basically anything that happens in the road reserve, from your footpath maintenance, your curb and channel maintenance, your rural vegetation control for sight lines, spraying around signs, your grading, your metalling, culvert works, digging out drainage, all of that is subsidisable. But the gaps that we've got sit in that traffic services, which is your signage. Making sure our signs are visible at night, and our road marking, making sure that we have, what we call limit lines, so give way and stop controls in place. Those are the ones that are currently slightly a gap in the funding space. And obviously work that the Land Transport Unit staff do, so in the inspections and monitoring and contract management, those are all also subsidisable. Street sweeping, what else have I missed anything else? But those are all subsidisable works that the Transport Agency will prove to a certain level.
It would be great to actually see the figures beside each of those.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely do that, yes.
Thank you.
So I guess the question here is do we want to match and go for the subsidisable work of an additional 415,000? And then I guess one of the questions is the non-subsidisable of 1.8. Do we want to do that?
You go.
Well, I think the subsidised work's a no-brainer. If someone else is going to pay for half of it and we need it, I'm not sure about the other side.
So I think in there again, this is why these are, to me, an LTP thing. If you look at the non-subsidised, I'm on the last page at the bottom, examples of council-funded non-subsidised activities, what you've got 1.8 tied up in that in total. Parking infrastructure and operations, I don't think we're in the position to know what a reduction, whatever that total value is, what a reduction looks like. So I think that's a program for the long-term plan. CBD maintenance and cleaning, I think for me I'd need to understand the current contract, what that looks like. Is there an alternative method? If you pulled that out tomorrow and you've got someone spewing on the main street in the in the middle of the night who goes and cleans that up, is that the nice friendly councillor on their way to work on Monday? I don't know. Urban street treat maintenance, what exactly is the alternative, and there again, levels of service, complaints, all that sort of thing. So I think all of this is relevant and should be considered, but there's some work programs around understanding what that looks like. And I think there's probably savings in that, but I think we just can't make a decision today.
I guess some of the things I get challenged on, we have a guy who goes around with a leaf blower every day, whether there's been a leaf in the main street or not, every day. So, is that the level of service we need or more? But I'm surprised the admin such as LIM building consents, I thought people who bought the LIM had paid for them. So what's that bottom line? Same with building consents. I thought we were in a user pays situation with those.
No,
I was just going to say that's just not subsidisable by the Transport Agency. So the cost recovery on that is probably a question for Andrea. I won't say it, but certainly the cost recovery, there's not a direct sum that comes to Land Transport to offset the land transport cost at this point in time. And probably further to your question, Your Worship, is that, well, not question so much, but that yes, we are obviously looking at all of those options, including the level of service stuff, and if there's another way to deliver some works through the 17A review that we're undertaking at the moment, which also has got a draft procurement opportunity, which will be brought to Council in the March meeting.
Cool. So for wider understanding, some of those things you can't just move in-house, or they've got to be contracted by nature because of NZTA procurement rules, etc., in real simple terms. So they do need to be stepped through. So that's good. This will fold into a LTP work program, I guess, probably for you, Steph, at the back. It's how we manage and monitor all of these things moving forward. So, I mean, it's that timely nature, so we don't throw a bombshell in March next year.
Maybe if I could just add one more thing around, I know Steph wants me to move on, but it is just around the way the National Land Transport Program works, and that while there might not be a surprise in March, there could be, as some of the longer-standing councillors will know, a bit of a bombshell in September when the government and NZTA actually adopt the National Land Transport Program, which can be quite different to what we've talked about in the long-term plan. So we do our best to try and understand what the government's aims are, and we have a very robust asset management plan that does cover both major parties as far as their priorities, but there can be changes that come to us, and it's usually after we've adopted, well, has always been after we've adopted the long-term plan.
Any other questions in regards to roading?
Yes, I've got one. We're looking at 4% rates cap overall rates payers, and we have 50-tonne trucks coming out of forestry blocks, ruining our Geraldine to Timaru gravel roads and costing, as we know, a large portion of those gravel road repairs from the roading budget. And what are we going to do? We can't. We're sitting here, and yet they are costing us up here. They could just about sit outside the rates cap, couldn't they, those forestry blocks?
I'm not sure on the mechanics of that, but so I'll answer that as well as I can, which is around that. Government NZTA have actually met the pothole prevention fund for year 3, which is for those works. What is a gap in that space is, unfortunately, a road is only as good as the crossing points on that road. So if bridges aren't fully funded, which, as I've mentioned, in both operational and capital, they are not, there is a bit of an issue and a bit of a gap there, both financially and physically, if there is no bridge in place. So that's, one of the issues that will be, I'm sure, thought about through the government policy statement on transport over the next few months.
I think we've got a workshop in a week or two on rates. That's one area that we could probably think about. Okay, those forestry blocks, do they get some sort of higher differential or not?
So moving along, this attachment, finance savings included in budget V2, is just reiterating what has been included in this version of the modelling that we did. So one thing just to note there, the project billing line is actually a credit the other way. So the savings are actually $2.88 million that's been modelled through here. 958, we've pushing the project teams to actually capitalise a fairer portion of their time. And then there has been some small increases or changes in the revenue items. So this is just a reminder as to the difference between the first version and the second version that we brought to council.
So a question around the capitalisation of time, because this is a conversation we've always had, and we've always sort of, is the discipline not there within council to appropriately do it? Because it's something that should happen if it's appropriate.
I think what's happened in the past is it wasn't a thing. And so over time, the discipline is getting better and better to actually capitalise time.
Right.
Some
councils are very good at it. I remember Ashburton didn't have consultants because they just capitalised it all.
Yeah. So So part of element time, which is the timesheeting system, will mean that actually every day they're filling in a timesheet. So every day they can be putting time to a work order for capitalisation, as opposed to, I'll get to the end of the quarter and go, oh, I think I did about 50% of time on capital projects, so I'll put 50% of my time. So, yeah.
The monitoring that needs to be very good, because what you can create is an environment where everyone's trying to justify their time, and so they put it against projects unnecessarily. So the discipline continues on senior leaders to make sure that they're not over-capitalising in a project.
So is there any questions on that?
So sorry, just so I'm clear, you're saying that the variance is 3.8, not 1.9? Yeah. Okay, well, that's good.
What is a flood risk certificate?
It's the pretty much minimum floor heights for subdivisions going through. So it's looking at, especially around infilling, it's where it's the more complicated modelling required to say, yeah, where can you build and how high? Yeah.
Okay, moving on to fees and charges. Favourite topic. Right, we'll invite all your questions. There's half a dozen general managers over there. Go for it.
To reflect, so some of us have already done some work on this, which was me last week. So has what we questioned in the strategic committee meeting, has that been reflected in these new, what you're presenting to me now? Or are you just re-presenting it and now I've got to go and find my notes and regurgitate that? Where did we get to? Because otherwise I've got to go and find my piece of paper and hog the microphone again, Steph.
So in that document that's in the hub, some of the GMs have provided additional commentary. They've added extra rows, and some have added comments into the document, which should show up in the hub. Not all of those, your questions, have been actioned by GMs.
The other thing that I can't see here is, do these proposed fees and charges now meet our policy?
So once we've landed on a rates increase, then we will model that. Then we have another model that will then do that analysis of fees, charges versus rates. There are probably still a couple, well, at least one area that is still breaking its policy. And so there'll be conversations that will need to be had with those individual activities to see, well, what can you do now so that we don't breach that? And some of it now is the way that, because over the last 2 years and because the policy was set to 3 years ago, times have changed. So Airport, for example, breaches it because now their fees and charges are actually greater than their rates. And so our policy says it the other way around. So there's a little bit of the policies now out of date, hence the workshop. And with SLT, I've got a workshop in 2 weeks' time, actually next week, and then council have got one the following week to then redo that policy to better fit reality now.
I'm confused because I thought the policy would come first. So why are our fees and charges being put up over that time in a breach of our policy? I get that the policy will need to be refreshed, but why have we just done this without consideration to our policy? That's the bit I'm not getting, but that's the bit I'm failing to understand. Surely a policy is a policy, and it gets reviewed at long-term plan time. And why have we gone outside of policy? And I've given the feedback we get on the audit process. So it just blows me away that the auditor hasn't looked at this.
They do look at it, yes. But
Why do none of us know that we're in breach of our policy?
So
being councillors, sorry.
Yeah, so last year was the first time that, in my experience, audit have actually looked at it. And so they look at it as, this year, how did we go? And obviously, depending on circumstances, you could breach, but we shouldn't plan to breach. But for example, the airport, the leases are too low, but the policy was set when there wasn't that work done yet to bring it back up to market. So it has changed.
And I mean, there's some cases where the fees and charges are sort of political in nature as well. So cost of going to swimming or cost of a building consent and that sort of thing. They're in a sort of semi-commercial market.
But I thought that was the purpose of having the range in the policy, is to allow for that kind of political/commercial element. But in some cases, we're even outside the range. And I'm going, and I get the drive to recover more from fees and charges and less from rates. I get that. But if we've got a policy that has a band, I don't understand how we just, go outside of policy.
Well, from my experience, the system can't cope with the policy. So effectively the model actually used this. When I first got here, remember I asked where are the losses? I couldn't get that because the system, the rates becomes the balancing number for all those departments, and sitting in corporate is the negative, the deficit. That makes it really hard. So when I first got here, I said, this doesn't work. We talked about it again last week. How do we make it work that your maximum is all you get from rates? The system doesn't cope with that. So we've got to actually look at how do we do that. And I can, I can name about four departments that are out of breach. They're breaching, but the system is just fixing it to a break even. So it needs to be sorted.
So the fix is through the LTP, the policy will need to have wider.
The policy, the policy needs to be redone, and the policy should be looking at public good, and also it's not funded by any fees and so forth, right? Now, I don't think it had any work done to it for the LTP. It just got rolled.
So it is quite old.
We had a workshop on it, but it was, to quote Councillor Scott, a freight train.
Yeah. And I think, so it's almost now 6 years out of date. Yeah.
One challenge I have, and this is probably Michelle's point though, is I've often talked with officers, won't name them, and said, oh no, the policy doesn't allow for it, but we're breaching policy. So we've got to be, so policy has to be fit for purpose, doesn't it? Yeah. So next time someone comes to me and says, the policy doesn't allow for that, it's going to be a discussion.
Can we be legally challenged on that?
You have to, for any fee you're charging, you have to show that there's a basis for the cost you're charging for the service, which also limits you as well, because sometimes we don't have an evidentiary based about or an understanding of about how things or the full cost of things. So it's trying to fit this kind of movable object with that sort of static object can be quite hard sometimes, especially when you're looking at rates increases and the market forces driving outside of that. And I'm thinking of quite specific areas.
And the policy for a place like the airport is actually about 4 or 5, 6 different little businesses in there. Like Air New Zealand is one, the parking's one, the hangars are one. There's about 4 different petrol businesses there and so forth. And just to say, here it is, and if you push one of them up, you suddenly breach, and actually you're not breaching because someone new has come along. So we need to think that through as well. I would have thought the rating into that airport would be probably public good for having Air New Zealand come in and out. That's it. But it's actually broader than that.
I only have one question, really. For a start, it's good to see some explanations in here about why some things haven't moved. But about 3 weeks ago, I brought up the animal control fees, and then I heard you discuss it last week as well, that they haven't moved yet. We already know that we're moving towards the pound. What is the explanation as to why they haven't moved?
What was that? I just didn't catch the question. Is the explanation for no change? Oh, the dog pound, yeah. We have allowed a provisional sum of $500,000 for the new dog pound. We have a reserve of 900,000 that's ring fenced, and the activity generates a small surplus, and we're currently funneling that, rightly or wrongly, into that reserve to cover us for the new dog pound. Because it's ring fenced, anything we make in there has to be used in the activity. So it's geared at the moment. It's just in the black, not in the red. But we are looking to move in this next financial year to put the new dog pound up. So that reserve will take a good nudge. Yeah, that'll take care of it, most of it. If that makes sense.
It does. So the justification of not moving on the fees is that they already do what we need them to do, including the establishment of the new pound. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. And because we need a foundation in evidence to change a fee in terms of it's got to be reasonably justifiable, and that's through the LGA and how we set our fees. Because we're in the black in that particular area, it might be deemed unjustified to lift the fees. Yes.
So can I just ask a follow-on, Mr. Cooper? So when we build the new pound, we will have a far greater rate of depreciation, and does that mean we will see a massive jump up in fees to be funding that depreciation?
The depreciation question would be in addition to OPEX, so that is potentially, it may lead to an increase in fees, yeah.
What Councillor Shannon's getting at is, should we be gradually increasing those fees over time rather than having a massive jump when we get the new pound to pay for the depreciation?
Unfortunately, the LGA works the other way around, whereby I think it sets you up to take on debt or a deficit and then change your fees to work the other way, so that you can't really make a profit. That's my understanding, but Stephen may have a more detailed knowledge on that.
What's the pound value though? That's only 300k or something, isn't it? Is it still in that, or is it increased?
We've put $500,000 aside.
So 10 grand over 50 years depreciation. So it's not a theatre, is it? Yeah.
I think it's something we probably have to look at, is that is a law that like the dog area, that surplus is sacrosanct for that? Is it ring fenced, or is that law, or is it just our policy? And maybe that's something we're going to look at, because if it's only our policy, well, hang on a minute, maybe it actually goes into the general fund. So I'll do some work on that.
Of course, my question is $500,000 accurate to buy land, put a pound up? We've got the land. But even still, any building these days, I'd suggest you'll struggle to build wire cages and a facility for $500,000.
Well, this is a hot topic between the CE and I. I'm assured it can be done for $500,000.
I just have a couple of questions. I just did a review and that was a waste of my energy. But anyway, sports grounds, communications to users. Have we communicated to the users these increase in charges? Yes or no?
No.
Okay.
Because
that's
nothing has
not ideal.
been decided on yet.
Well, no, there was a draft letter that was going out.
Yep.
So did that go out? Well, yes, I know that. Okay, no. What I can't calculate, and sorry if it's somewhere in the multiple spreadsheets, but with the changes proposed in fees and charges, what does that do to increase in revenue? What's the number? What does this equate to?
It's hard to tell because it's obviously scattered over numerous activities, so we'd have to go through each individual activity, see their increases, and then add that up.
Okay, so
it's not just one
dartboard
place.
again.
No.
We didn't go, okay, this is going to increase $1 million.
No, because each fees and charges are different depending on the activity, and the revenue generated in those activities is different. So we would have to go to each activity and say, well, okay, this is $1 million in this activity because we've put the fees and charges up 1%, but then that's not the same for the next activity we look at, because you might put that up 2%, but their revenue is less.
But we didn't even do a cost comparison from last year revenue received versus if we increased 2%, this what the potential income could be. Example, the hall, I don't know, one of the halls, we've increased by 20%. If we go off current last year's usage and then we add 20%, what revenue is that going to generate? For example, Mike and his stadium. So surely we've looked at that. So when every person has looked at what they want to increase, have they gone, this is how much this would generate?
So they would have done that at an individual activity level, but
Okay,
it's
so
not
someone
something
does know.
that it's not something that you can do.
Yeah, you don't have
as
a table
broad
that says.
brush. We could pull that table together, yes.
I think I get your point, Stacey, because the modelling that we got shown in the workshop last week had 21,000 of fees and charges, and so does this modelling. So would indicate that even though you've given us here's our new fees and charges, we don't know what effect that's going to have. And that, if that's, I don't know, 500,000, that will make a massive difference to the surplus that we're looking at the plus 12, plus 9, plus 7.
So when the activity managers set their budgets, they went through and their fees and charges and their volumes and actually have factored that into their budgets.
Yeah, so I understand that, but I feel like it hasn't flowed through to our model, like the changes that you've presented today, not you personally, but that have been presented today, isn't flowing through into the modelling yet.
So some of the new ones that as they were challenged to put them up, haven't gone through. Yeah.
So we don't have an idea of what that quantum is?
Not yet.
Not yet, but we will come 31st of March.
You look at the scenarios, our forecast fees and charges is 20.6. We're putting a budget in of 21.7. So that is 1.1 million. That's on our overview. So if you look at the line, full year January forecast, 20.6. Our budget for 26.27 is 21.7. Now, if you have a look at it, in 24-25, we made 21.4. Our budget for 25-26 was 21.4, but we're forecasting it'll be less, it'll be 20.6. Even though you're increasing, it doesn't necessarily mean you get a full increase because people stop using stuff.
I think the point is between version 1 and between whatever version we're up to and the proposed fees and charges today, that is not reflected in the modelling.
It should be, but we'll check that.
Just a minor one on all the hall hires. There's public liability insurance cover that hasn't increased. I'm amazed that an insurance premium hasn't increased in 12 months. And there's no movement there. And I'm just interested, it says if required, I would have thought everyone would have public liability insurance if they were hiring one of our venues.
So some people have their own public liability insurance, so that's why that's a choice. And we've set it at $17 and stayed like that. The public liability hasn't gone up. That's still covering all costs.
So is everyone comfortable with what they've worked through themselves, or is there a need to work through these? I'm sure you've probably been through a million times, so I don't think we have to go line by line as such, but just make sure you get any questions that are sitting out there and then we can step forward.
To note, we have minuted all comments and recorded them all from the Strategic Planning Committee, so there's no real need to repeat those now, but if there's any new ones that came up on your review of the fees and charges document, we're happy to take.
The comments that have been provided, where they have been provided, are really good, it's helpful, so thank you.
I was just doing a little dive on Councillor Shannon's comments, and basically the thing with the dog pound is it's when the depreciation and the interest kicks in, and that then goes as a cost to the service. So that's when you can start charging for them. It's restriction. There's a kind of funny interaction between the Dog Act and the LGA in this regard, that the fees have to be set to cover reasonable costs. So there is a limitation in how much you can front load those.
Thank you. Just what really got me thinking was this workshop the other day that when we were talking about development contributions and actually recognising when something is growth and how you fund that growth, and if there is a mechanism that is going to do that. That's all.
Well, it's interesting that dog ownership's one of those funny ones, is because it's a discretionary thing, it's carried purely by the dog owners rather than the community at large, and that's kind of what the function of the dog registration charging is trying to do, that it covers it's trying not to land all ratepayers with their part of the goodness of the dog, so you don't charge the people who are being protected from the dogs, you only charge the dog owners.
I have to admit, a lot of people get benefit from seeing my corgi walking every morning, so is community good.
And it's a brave politician that tries to take on the cat owners that's been shown in the past.
Yeah, it's.
Ready to go, so let's get the meeting resumed. So I'll speak to the officers to take us into the capital work program.
So attached is it's called Capital Program Variances, is the one that we've looked at, and Steph's kindly printed it for those who prefer printing. So what this shows is the first column is the LTP year 3. So this is what 3 years ago we had planned to do. The AP 26-27 is what we are planning to do now. And then the variance column is obviously the sum of the difference. And then there's been some commentary written down the side. So I open it up for questions for the specific general managers to answer in regards to their capital program.
Some of these are also CE induced, like the first one, arts purchase. I'm the one that said, I don't think we should keep on buying art, but you may choose to keep buying art. And the sentiment there is that if there is art to be bought, it should be done through these bequests. So we just need to, unless you want to go through each item, or do you just want to ask questions?
Could I just make a general comment as well? So this is a list of expenditure. This is not how it's funded.
Yes.
So some will be funded via debt, some will be funded via subsidies and grants, and some will be covered by reserves. So just because it's saying, you know, that we might have $2 million on, I'll pick on the museum, for example, that is actually part funded by council, but also part funded by donations and bequests. So this is actually what we are planning to deliver, not necessarily how we've funded it.
So a question, so I would hope the likes of an arts purchase, if that's a saving, then that's a rate saving because it wouldn't be loan funded, surely.
But it could be a bequest.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Actually, that concept of talking about capital from rates is, it's not rates, it's actually the depreciation. We're either funding it from depreciation or we're funding it from loans.
Yeah, agreed.
Right.
And so that would be interesting. Is that something that someone here would know if you go line by line? Someone can actually talk to that, or could we have that? Because I think that's good information for councillors, and maybe it's something off to the side that someone does just for understanding.
You're probably right. We could actually sort these into renewals that are funded by depreciation versus growth that's funded by loan.
Because and there again, it just dials down to if there's a genuine saving. If you're ripping something out and it's sitting within depreciation and it was going to be funded anyway, you know, I think that would be helpful. I don't think that's necessarily exact, you know, for this process, but I think, you know, at some point if someone could provide that back to members, it'd be good. So how do you guys want to play? Has everyone had a skim yet? I note that already there's a 60,000 saving in the pound, so that's good. It's a good bit of tension between NT and PC.
I prefer a bit more detail if that's okay.
Just another thing to note. This is just 1 year. They've either spent it in this year or they're pushing it over 2 periods going forward. So yeah, this is just 1 year.
Point that I've been trying to make about deferrals, because you've just explained debt, loans, reserve, bequests again, but that's not reflected, like we can't see how that works. That would have been a good column. But then what is deferred and what is not? Because once again, just
the first column is LTP year 3. So that's exactly what we said would happen in that year.
I understand that, but what Andrea's just saying is that the variances is because we've done the work or we've deferred it. And some of it is reflected in there, like deferral, like Downlands water network modelling, deferral. Well, that's because it's going, I presume. But, so it just becomes quite difficult to, on an informed decision on the bottom line. Because are we going to be picking it up again when we do the LTP work? That's okay, don't worry.
But no, it's a good point, because it does sort of talk, it's sort of similar to my point on how it's funded, isn't it, and what effect that has on a rate as an example.
So there are some commentary against some of them that answer your questions, but noted.
Can I just ask a question about one of the lines here with the road streetscapes? Clearly, our strategic plan funding for 26-27 in Geraldine, Pleasant Point and Tamika is for the CHOP. So you better not let me find 73k being spent on something else that's not as valuable. But my question is, where that money where we were going to be spending that on the footpath, replacing the slippery tiles, would that then mean that that wouldn't happen? We wouldn't replace those tiles, or would those then go under Susie's budget?
Great question. So this, obviously we're doing some of that slippery tile work this financial year in those key locations. That's what the Community Board have resolved to do. So we've started planning that work, but future ones would fall into the normal footpath budget, of which there's approximately $2 million sitting there that goes across the entire district. So it would be competing against other renewals that might be required across the district.
Diane, I have a few questions for you, if you don't mind, and I don't mean to pick on you, but... So, a month or so ago, the Tamika Community Board went with you and Andrew and had a look at the stadium, and obviously, they want to see that stadium fixed, and we saw, you pointed out, the problems with the roof and things like that. And I did say at the time, when it comes to full council, how does that line up with other projects? And forgive me if I've picked something up wrong, because I've just had a very quick look through here, but there's some other building related projects in there. Some have been reduced, but my challenge is, can we not do them and do the stadium? Because I notice there's no money for the Tamika Stadium. Yet there's money for this building, there's money to convert social housing, there's money to re-roof social housing. And so is that your priority? Is that how you see those priorities, as those projects, given the state of the building and the deterioration that's going to occur? Are you comfortable with it?
To make one comment, re-social housing, that's another activity that's ring-fenced. So that money is coming out of their reserves from their leases and their...
Okay, so this building versus the Tamika Stadium then, is that... are you comfortable with that prioritisation? Because this will get really challenged around the Tamika Community Board, because the stadium has been just kicked the can down the road, and now we're doing it again.
I think that it's not on this list because it's happening this year. 25, 26. There was 250 sitting in this year for strengthening. That is not going to happen now, so it's going to be put to the roof.
Towards the roof. Yep, so we've got a paper going up on the 31st to get the money taken out of earthquake to roof repairs. This building here is the money is for HVAC system, which is over 20 years old, and it's coming to the end of its life. This summer, luckily, we haven't had a hot summer because it hasn't been. I'm not sure if anybody else has noticed, but it hasn't been working correctly. Yeah. And so, as Andrea said, the social housing is ring fenced, but a lot of those houses, we've got buildings from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and our roofs are original, and we're starting to have leaks in those, so we've got to make sure we keep in with the Healthy Homes standards for that.
So do we have debt against social housing? So then the question is, are we comfortable doing those capital improvements versus just repaying debt?
So last year, there was a whole exercise done on what what are we going to do with social housing? So in that particular paper, it looked at the different options for the amount of debt that it actually has. So it actually is chipping away at its debt, as well as, and then bringing those leases closer to market is also helping that cause as well.
And Stace Boothie and myself did some work with the team on that as far as, but we probably on that just need to pick it up again at some point and just revisit.
I was literally opening up my file to make a note of that.
Just one question to Mr. Traynor. We've got the stadium's earthquake prone, did you say, but we're roofing it before we strengthen it. Can you explain that?
Sorry.
Been reassessed and it isn't earthquake prone.
When it was originally assessed, it was quite low. We've had a second report and it's now 67%. So.
I've just got a couple of questions. Museum, there's 200k up from 20k for museum storage project. What is that?
So that's another report coming up on the 31st. Talking about changing the museum into a storage, using the current museum into storage once it moves over. There's some things that need to happen there, like they've got a leaky roof as well, and they've got some other things that need to be brought up to standard for it to actually just be functional, really. So we've been able to get away with it for so long, but yeah.
That kind of thing, I see opportunity there, and what we should be doing is considering selling the land. You know, like there's absolute opportunity there, and so we should be approaching, 3 or 4 developers and saying, do you want to purchase this land? What a great inner city living.
Yeah,
and
so
here we're going to do up a building that we thought was unusable.
That's all coming up in the paper, and it'll give you the different options, the different costs, roughly the different costs. So it'll be a lot more to sell that and to try and find somewhere else suitable and within a reasonable cost.
Was that land gifted to us where the museum is? Are we able to sell that?
We can sell it, but it has got on the title, it has got a clause on there that it has to be used for art, museum, those sorts of. You can get it removed, but it is a few more loopholes and probably quite a bit of money to get that taken off.
A couple of more questions. Timaru Stormwater, we've got an automated sampling that's going to cost 209. Does that mean there will be some saving in staffing because we're doing something automatically now?
Sorry, jump in that one. That's the new consent, so it's setting up the monitoring sampling we've got to do for the new consent. So it's stuff we haven't been doing, it's stuff we've now got to do.
And I'm just intrigued by Central Timaru renewals, the 1.5 million addressing Wilcombe and George Street and relating to the theatre, Wilcombe and George. Can someone explain what that means and when are we doing it, since we're already honky into the museum and well into the theatre?
So this is a hangover from Citytown. The 3 water renewals in the CBD were all packaged up at LTP time under Urban Water for whatever reason, and it was packaged out over 10 years for the renewals in the central area. So that 1.5 is to do the renewals along outside the theatre, plus going up and down. What we do need to look at is actually pulling it back out of urban water and putting it across the activities back to stormwater, sewer and urban water.
So, and then just to add to that, so the plan is that prior to the museum opening, the theatre and the museum opening, is that we will have resurfaced the road outside there. And so obviously to resurface the road, doing the asphalt, we want to make sure that all the pipes underneath have been worked on. So, dig once, paint once.
There was multiple dependency projects on that, and there was power as well. So because that was one of the reasons why we're going to open up all that and work together. So is that still happening, or?
Yeah, we're still confirming with Alpine what their requirements are and where their budget sits. So yes, it's work in progress.
And it will be completed before the theatre opens. Because we're going to look pretty stupid if we open a theatre, then close the road down for a month and a half to put pipes in the ground.
I won't be resurfacing the road if that's the case. So basically, the work will only go ahead if the program can fit into ensuring that we're only disrupting that area while the theatre is closed.
But surely if we need to do the work, we need to do... This is what confuses me.
This comes down to the timing. So we're trying to get it done before the theatre. If not, then it's probably a good 3 to 5 years away. Alpine is sort of the linchpin on this to make sure that they're in a position to do it. There's still a wee bit of life in those pipes, but they're 100 years old, that type of, so it's how far do you want to stress them? It's getting in for, especially, you don't want to run these ones to fail.
But it's the alignment with Alpine.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is, yeah, okay. While I've got the microphone, minor projects, tiling, under budget, trial underway for new footpath type, success to be determined, that's fine, understand those issues. Funding available in 28. I don't think that's the community's expectation following that corner trial on when we're likely to be able to roll out further investment. And obviously that's your capital that would need to come forward. I think part of it was more to be reconsidered after the winter to give it enough time. Have you got thoughts on that, maybe, Susie?
Yeah, so we've obviously opened up feedback to the community on that section, and to be fair to say at this stage it's been pretty mixed, slightly ahead, and yes, people like it, but we'll wait and see what winter brings. There is also an opportunity to undertake a little bit of further work, undertake the traffic signals upgrade, so actually doing all 4 corners on that location. We're just working through a few construction methodology issues at the moment where we did get some minor cracking of the larger tiles or pavers that separate the asphalt, so we're just working through that construction methodology at the moment to see if we can improve that, which might deal with some of the issues. And yes, there's obviously potential to bring a report to council after winter if we've nutted out those issues of ensuring that this is the right solution for Timaru, for Stafford Street, to bring forward any of that funding if that is requested by council to undertake further work in the next financial year. But again, noting that there is significant underground infrastructure that goes berm to berm, so from boundary to boundary, that may or may not need replaced ahead of work happening, or of course if we go and undertake the work then there'll be a reinstatement requirement for those other utilities operators that may dig it up in the future.
Other than the cracking in those major tiles and the bigger tiles, what's the other negative feedback been? I wouldn't have thought there would have any negative feedback, but there was there?
Yeah, mixed bag, why do it at all? I've got an email, I can send it round. It's only just come in the last week. Yeah.
People I've spoken to think it looks pretty good.
It should be noted that it's still pretty low numbers. I think it was under 20
no, it's not.
feedback, so it's certainly not
large
getting...
margin of error, I would expect.
And I think there was a one ahead for yes, no, keep going. I did quite like the sad bumblebee conversation.
What is our plan for consultation with the community boards? Because I know we don't have meetings prior to the 31st of March, yet we're proposing to cut the strategic plan funding, and if I'm right, and I haven't read it in detail, we're proposing to cut some of the cycleway funding, which, loosely went to kind of the pathway to Pleasant Point. Then last year was Geraldine, and Temuka was kind of eyeing that up. And so I think there'll be quite a bit of pushback on that, and I wondered, are we going to consult with them prior to that, because we all know nothing much changes.
So once you guys are the masters of the annual plan at the end of the day. Once you've sort of fixed on what the options are and what you want to go ahead with, then it gets taken to the community boards and they give information back to you as part of the sort of consultation programme. It's for an annual plan of this stage where it's sort of not different in such a manner to the long-term plan that you have to consult. It is more of an inform than a consult, but they will get the opportunity to tell you what they think about it, and no doubt they'll do it clearly, but it's not, at the end of the day, it's your plan as councillors that you're taking to them. That doesn't stop you talking to them in between times as to what we're proposing and things like that, but the formal feedback to them comes after you've kind of decided on the path to take.
I just wonder if at that meeting on the 31st of March, it's worth either giving the representative speaking rights or inviting them to speak at public forum, because then the whole room hears it from them.
Yeah, I agree, and maybe we are missing a trick here, because what's going on in those various areas really should be just part and parcel of the capital program, and we need to have that conversation about how do we actually represent that here, because these what I've witnessed with the 71K, they struggle to come up with what are we going to do with this money, and I just wonder whether there's a better way of doing it, because 71,000 doesn't go far, and to be honest, when something's got to be done, it's going to be above that, and it should be bought into the overall.
And Temuka is a classic example of that, because we've decided to use our 71,000 this year fixing slippery tiles, because we've had so much feedback on it, and you know the argument is, well, you know, that's really should just be funded out of council's normal budget, but we don't want to wait, so we're going to get on and do it. Yeah, exactly. So I think it would be worth making sure that we've got a good representative that will speak to that at the meeting on whenever it is, 31st of March.
So there is a community board meetings next week. So I guess it could be an opportunity for you to raise it with them at that point in time for the ones that are attending, because I guess the other thing that they need to consider at some point is their targeted rate. And how much would you like to put that up? So if you're attending the community board meetings, if you could get some kind of feel for what that might look like, whether it's $1, $2, 10%, 20%, whatever.
Whatever it is, Geraldine will be more.
Yeah, traditionally, yes.
In the words of George Orwell, we're all equal, but...
I would say it's important to note that regions aren't being picked on in this regard, though, that this fund was developed as a sort of rural town a rural town equivalent to the city town funding, and that's been reduced, so this is reduced in tandem.
I don't disagree with the proposal to remove it. I'm just saying we need to hear from the community boards around their views on it earlier rather than later.
Hey, Scotty, I'm there next week. I will support you. Yeah.
Because when you think about this, you know, it's 210,000 a year. 5 years, you've actually forked out $1 million.
No, it's $210,000 for the 3 years.
Oh, for the 3 years.
Yeah.
But for 3 community boards.
Community boards.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
So
it's
it's
600.
Yeah, so there's the thick end of $1 million over 5 years, and you go, are we doing the best thing with that money? I'm not sure.
It was only 210 for the first 3 years of
Yeah, I understand
the
that.
long-term plan. It didn't continue.
Do you want to bet?
The long-term plan, it didn't continue. And so it was divided by 3 to get the 70K per year, as opposed to a one-off
Okay.
210 that lasted 3 years.
And it was born out of the strategic plans, which I think are still, good documents, but it probably has to go back to that around what's important for those communities. They need to be reviewed every 3 years. They should probably be being reviewed this year, I would expect, coming into the LTP, in theory, just a high level, using council staff, that would be my thinking. Are the priorities the same? I know you've got you thinking now, Stephen, but probably it needs to happen this year prior to LTP, or to be able to feed into that. And then again, analysing what stuff that is just core council service, and then what stuff is sitting out of that. And ideally, actually, the community boards make a request back to council for appropriate funding, and then it should, in my view, if that's the case, be rated versus loan fund, or analyse the appropriate funding mechanism, because that's what 0.23%, I think, of a rate, which would be better to be embedded as opposed to loan funding. But that would, my thinking, would be a rough process. Yeah.
So maybe leading into the long-term plan, we should be inviting the community board to be putting up their projects and what they might want to be considered for that long-term plan.
Andrea, just with this number 6, sorry, whatever it is, will this come back again on the 31st of March? Because I just wondered if it would be, just that column of debt, loan, reserve, bequest, whatever, deferred, would be really helpful, just so then we all know, so when we get, when the tiles come at us, we say, well, no, it is being funded here, it's been deferred or whatever. Are you
Yes.
planning on doing that?
Yes, we could.
I think that would be really helpful, please, thank you.
Do we have any more questions around capital?
Sorry, just well, it is a question. I note we have reduced the cemetery spending, but I wonder if we can just get it to zero, because I still think we're going too fast on that project.
Well, there was an argument between some SLT and me. I thought we had 10 years at the cemetery. I've been told it's 5 years. So it's a little bit of, it sort of feels a bit like the refuge station, that it seems to change. So we need to get, well, yeah, but it wouldn't fill up 5 years in a year. So we just need to get that landed. Exactly how long have we got?
That needs to move into projects and procurement, because we once again got a pretty picture. And if it needs to be developed within the next 2 to 3 years to accommodate in 5 years' time, I'd say that's very serious, that project, because there was a lot of money.
So we'll just get it cleared, exactly how long we've got. On the other piece on this, on this document, right on the last page, here is the additional NZTA funding they're going to throw at us. This is over and above what we normally do, is that correct, Susie? So they're offering another 4.3 million of contributions for a number of things, and we have to stump up another 3.7.
My question is, where's that money coming from if we agree to?
We would borrow that.
No. And is that next year?
Correct.
Sorry, and I just want to highlight that we're still, so the funding is confirmed for most of those top lines, except for the Heaton Hayes Southern Port access. I'm still working with the New Zealand Transport Agency at the moment to obtain funding for that project, so it may or may not go ahead next financial year. It'll depend on that, and obviously there'd just be no drawdown if it weren't to go ahead until the future National Land Transport Programme. And there are the two lines there that currently don't obtain subsidy at the bottom, which is the minor network improvements and also the Elm Street construction, which is related to growth in that Glen Eddy area. Yeah, it doesn't exist at the moment, but it is an unformed legal road between the end of Poplar Street and connects onto Glen Eddy Road.
It is. So, Susie, can you just explain what the safety improvements are on Pleasant Valley, Craig Road, Kennedy Street safety improvements that we're contributing 318? Because I know we had safety improvements in Temuka that the community questioned why. The safety islands in a back street of Temuka where you might see 10 cars a day.
Yeah, so these ones, so Kennedy Street, you'll remember we've had like a number of crashes through there in Geraldine, yep. And so Kennedy Street is basically taking, that's the road that currently goes straight through onto State Highway 79 and taking that out and just widening the intersection with State Highway 79 at the T intersection. So that's that one. And then Councillor Harper and I have been working with the local Pleasant Valley community around that work. So that would involve improvements to the Tip Lady Pleasant Valley Road intersection on State Highway 79. So it would be closing Pleasant Valley Road from access from State Highway 79 and prioritising that route at Craig Road, which would take away a lot of the conflict that you have with the trucks accessing Tip Lady Road. So yeah, we've been working with that community out there.
Susie, what's the Heaton Hayes Southern Port access upgrade? Surely not 2.7 to upgrade a crossing there. Must be more than that.
It's likely to go across 2 financial years. So in year 1 of the long-term plan to finish it, it'll probably be around a $5 million project. But the deliverability of the works that need to occur through there, with the lead times of the rail work that needs to happen and the signal work, which yes, we have to pay for because it is road over rail, which means that Kiwi Rail actually own that bit of land. And so why do we need to do it? It's all around keeping access at grade access, so crossing the rail line at the same grade for our over dimension and overweight trucks that come in and out of the port. So our like our large hydroelectric componentry, all sorts of other bits and pieces that come in and out of the port. So that's what that project is.
Why don't they use the Port Loop Road?
They can't because it's a bridge. So it's the overweight, over dimension stuff. They're unable to go in and out of State Highway 78. And also the maintaining this access and keeping it open is obviously pretty important to our port and the wider economy, but it is on the directive of Kiwi Rail. We need to meet their requirements, and those are pretty significant. We've worked with Kiwi Rail now, I think, for about 16 years to try and get a extended deed of grant to maintain that access and keep it open for our community and for the wider, I suppose, yeah, effectively national economy, if you think about it, when you think about the hydroelectric components that come out of there. Yeah, it's been a long road to get to this point. So we're getting closer, but yeah, it all does depend on obtaining funding through the National Land Transport Programme.
I'm just stunned it's going to cost $5.4 million to do that.
I think there's a lot of money in signals and stuff as well, is there? Is that part of the whole overall project, or is that separate?
Yeah, a lot of it sits in the rail work that we have to do to meet their current standards. And we're negotiating at the moment to get an extended deed of grant over that area. The standard ones, I believe, the new standard deed of grants are only for year-on-year rolling, and obviously we've got a significant capital expenditure to do that, so we're negotiating for a much longer term to enable us to capitalise and depreciate the asset.
I was just going to make a comment. There's a great project out of, on State 79, Highway 79, but I do know that Geraldine love a roundabout, so if you've got some money in the budget to get another roundabout for Councillor Harper, that'd be great. Happy to support.
I just want to go back to, on the subject prior to this one, just to put a perspective on the life of the cemetery. Last year I applied to purchase a double plot and I was turned down because they said they were not selling them in advance because there's limited room. So if you want to prepare for it, you need to get the other one started so we can purchase something. So I was disappointed because I wanted to have all that set up so the family didn't have to worry about it. But that was the reason you couldn't pre-purchase, is because it's running out of space.
There's a few in that situation, Graham. I've got a few that want to be buried with their mates up there. Susie knows who I'm talking about.
Sure about my mates, but
no.
Just one mate, my wife.
Yeah. It's interesting though. Look, because I know where my parents are buried, and I've sort of watched it fill up. And based on my high level analysis, I'd still say it's got 7 or 8 years left in it. So there you go. You can take that away. I walk the dog.
Reapply.
I walk the dogs there quite a bit, and I've watched over the last 8 years it slowly fill up. But agree though, I think you do need to start some of that work on the other one, because the planting, all that sort of stuff has to happen sooner than later. So you can't do nothing. You've still got to prep for the future.
So if we circle back to where we started today, we talked about the aim, it was more to give some options. It was more to have an opportunity to discuss the fees and charges, to discuss the capital, to have a shallow dive into roading. But actually, we were here to talk about roughly what we would like to go out to the community with, to let them know where we were heading next year. So we put some options up there, and looking for some feedback as to what we from today will model, what we will then do the whole document for the public on, and where we might land with our rate scenarios per household, because all of that information is the kind of thing that we give out to the public as part of this process to understand, well, these are my rates this year and these are my potential rates next year. So we sort of just need some, I guess.
Before we give you guidance or direction, my question for officers would be, with all that we know, setting this council up for success, what is the recommendation from officers?
I think we're all divided. Yeah.
We'll just go in a room.
I think. Yeah, obviously, where you set yourself now will have quite an impact on following years. Yeah.
I would say from talking to peers and other councils, a lot of them are thinking of it as a kind of landing the plane thing, where they are starting here and then trying to sort of safely land it when rates capping comes in. And that's, I mean, will probably be quite structurally different by that point, but it is looking to try and not be a hero in year one.
So then, as far as consultation, no consultation, we've still got to put something out there. Is a question we're going to ask, this is what council recommends and what's your feedback still? So there is that opportunity to get feedback. Yep. So I guess that process is normal.
We won't at this sort of stage, it's more of the inform and tell us what you think about it level. We're not asking them for any feedback on any specific topics or any specific decisions that you have to make on it. It is just taking quantum and saying, what do you think? And asking feedback from that. It's driven by our significance and engagement policy, and when you start making those bigger decisions, that's when it kind of tips you into LTPville. Yeah, it is at that inform level. We're just keeping them up to date with what you're planning.
Yes, I'm happy to lead. My feedback is to stay high at this point in the opportunity. Bearing in mind, if you think about it too, so you bake in a rate now, and then you look and focus at all those savings. The rate you bake in now, 1%, call it $1 million, is 10 million over 10 years. The other way to look at it is in next year when we do that full deep dive, we look at a saving, a 1% saving will be a saving over a 10-year period, if you look. So within Kiwi. So you can look at it two ways, but I just don't want us to get to a point whereby next year at LTP we're going without doing that deep dive analysis. So I'm a sit at the 12 at this point to set us up for success.
Just clarify something here. With regard to the 9%, it shows here, just to make sure I've got it clear, that the next year 704 and the year of 28-29 3.91. So it leads us to that, if we were 9% this year.
Yes, it does, but there's a big caveat in there.
Yes.
The theatre stadium work, that the dollars that are in there were done 3 years ago. So that was an indicative figure. It may not be reality now because we still don't know the operating model of the theatre and then the difference. So that was in the LTP that got us to break even in about year 4 or 5 of the LTP. So it just makes it a bit tougher in 27, 28 to know.
Do the 7.04. So based on that, on what you've just said there, that this is an optimistic projection with a lot of other things unknown at this stage. So, okay.
It's the challenge, Graham. There's still lots of unknowns, and a lot of that will get unpicked over the course of the next sort of 12 months. So, yeah, that's the decisions with imperfect information.
I probably sit more at the 9, which is a movement from where I was a week ago at 7. Whilst I agree we need to set ourselves up for success, I keep hearing what Councillor Wilson said last week around people in our community would like to do that as well and are not in the position to do that. So I think the 9 is a happy medium. It's still a surplus. It's not as good as surplus. It's not going to quite set us up for success like we think. And it doesn't really convey, the 12% doesn't really convey all the work we've done, which we talked about before, as a what is the community going to think. And I just think there is so much we can do in the long-term plan that I think that is actually where we're going to really set ourselves up for success.
So how many options are we going to go out to the community with? We're not. Okay.
Okay, so we'll tell them what you're proposing,
Okay.
and then you adopt that at the end.
Yeah, well, I'm probably with Michelle. I'm a 9%er. I've moved up a bit because looking to the future, but I probably can't justify 12 to pay down debt with everything else that's going on in the world, and I'm cautious that our own costs might go up quite dramatically in the next 3 to 6 months as well. So
9 was just a number. We did 9 last year. It could be 10, it could be 11.
It could be 8.
So if you go, 10 is what, 2.7 surplus, roughly? So, yeah. But obviously we're not making a decision, but we need to give you direction, because you've got to go out with something. Yeah.
This is just to enable us to go away and actually properly model it, and then bring it back to you on the 31st for an actual decision to take it forward.
Remembering that, between when you go out to the community and when you finally adopt, it could move.
In the same camp, obviously, as Councillor Pye and Councillor Piddington, I'm very keen to see what that 9 looks like, particularly broken down to, you know, we have household, urban, what that means in terms of rates for our ratepayers as well. That's quite useful for us. And I'm actually optimistic as to what the officers can achieve around that. You know, when we went out with that figure last year, what the team's actually done is better than that at the end of the day. I think we need to give the team a bit of credit to what they can actually do with those numbers and continue to drive those efficiencies. And I also understand we need to set ourselves up. But the hard work's going to be done for the LTP, so for now I'm a 9 as well.
I'm actually still undecided. I understand. I understand where you're coming from, Your Worship, regarding setting ourselves up for success. Totally understand that, and obviously we all want the best for our community and our ratepayers for the future. I just know there's at 12%. I just know there's going to be so much noise out there, and it's not going to be very pretty. Like I say, I understand it, but yeah, it makes me nervous. So 9%. And also, you know, we went from 15, down to 9, and now we're looking at going back up again. I'm not quite sure what sort of signals that sends to our ratepayers, and that concerns me as well. But I am excited by some of the figures that I've seen, and I know there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, so well done. But yeah, obviously some more savings. I think as long as we can signal to our ratepayers that if there is going to be a 12%, if that's where it lands, increase, that we are doing plenty of work behind the scenes to try and set ourselves up for success, and what that's going to look like.
Can I just clarify for you, Councillor Jackson, we were 15, 12, 12, so 15, 9, 12 is still actually less over the 3 years than what we had anticipated originally.
Yeah. Absolutely get that and understand that, but I'm not quite sure how our ratepayers are going to react to that. You know, they don't have the same sort of understanding that perhaps we do around the table.
I don't think I could, would or should go back to the good folks of Geraldine and say it's going to be a 12%er. There might be a public execution in the village square, and Rachel Comer could send a journalist out there or come out herself for the exhibition. So I'm sitting on the 9er at the moment.
Can I just jump in here, because I didn't realise we're going around, but I think the exciting thing here for me is that whatever you go out with, it's the reaction we're going to get that's going to be interesting, isn't it? Like, whatever that may be. Now, I'd like to know what the public thinks. So going out with something's going to be great. I was, and I have to say, Nigel, that I respect your opinion. I know what you're trying to do, but I just struggle with the 12. But I do respect where you come from on that. I was more of a 7 once when I came back from Wellington. I was probably even lower than that at one stage, and I still would. That question still sits in me. If we were at 7, can we still find $1.5 million surplus? But I've got the background to that. So anyway, I'm just going to wrap up and say that the figure I really enjoyed looking at in the sheets here was 8.5. You might think it's pedantic, but it's just under where we were last year. It looks like, man, that team they've really done some homework, and it would mean the surplus instead of 1.8 would be 1.35.
You've only come up, Graham, because you've realised now that you need to lock in those plots, and we need to get some progression.
Not allowed to.
Yeah, I mean, 12 is prudent. You're never going to sell that. I wouldn't, and the only reason I wouldn't say 12 now is because I think it's an absolute travesty to do that and set ourselves up for a future that we don't even know and understand. So bringing it back down to 9 and making sure that we, again, control the narrative, that we're doing that with a view to this is how we've come to here and done a lot of work and sacrifice to do it, that we're heading to rate capping. Keep using the rate capping and people just feel they're in a comfort zone knowing that this is what's going to happen.
I'm a bit like OJ, I just really undecided. I've been trying to sort of just run some numbers. So, you know, a $5,000 rate bill at 12% is going to be about 11.
Doesn't quite work like that, so.
No, okay, I realise that. I'm just saying if someone's on a $5,000 rate bill and they get a 12%, you know, it might be around $11, $12 sort of per week increase. If they have lower rates, higher rates, different differentials, I know. So just trying to break it down into what would be the impact on people that have to pay these rates. And yeah, I definitely would be leaning towards the lower levels, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, look, I think if you, for me, remember, largely we're an infrastructure provider. You know, you throw some community facilities and stuff in there, but, you know, if you compare it to your power bill, all those sort of things, actually rates, you still get value. It does, even though I know it's hard, but it does sit within affordability, you know, definitions, et cetera. But look, I'm comfortable with, you know, I think it's landing on a 9. That's why I went high, because I didn't want to let anyone lead in with 7. So I think we've got to where we... It's the art of politics team, so I think you've probably got enough to go away with. But look, I think what's good about this, it's a good debate, and the next year we've got a lot of work to do as far as officers, elected members. I think we're all, you know, on the same page in that we want to set this community up for success, and we just have to be smart about it. So. Yeah, good fun, good discussion. Is that anything else? You guys happy with that? You got some direction?
Yep, we can take that away and model up, see what it looks like. Again, you'll get the sample properties, and just to reiterate, those aren't what all residential properties next will look like. It's just a single property. But yep, nope, that's enough for us to go with.
Just have some analysis still, if it's not too hard, just around that breakdown. I think community's starting to get interested in order versus rest, so we can clearly indicate that, because I think that's part of the conversation. Whatever we do through this is just getting community more familiar with the reality of water bills and what needs to be done over the next X amount of years. Yeah, thank you. Alrighty, I think we can, we can probably close off there. Any final words?
Thanks.
Perfect.
Surprised with all these real estate agents that we have here, or X ones, that we're hitting on whole numbers and not going 9.999 or 7.
Well, 8.5.
Yeah. Good work. Thanks, everyone, if you've been listening. Appreciate that. And that will come through to a paper for us to then sign a number off to go out to community for the annual plan. Thank you.